This is my post-fight video for Amir Mansour versus Kelvin Price. For those of you who don't know, Amir Mansour is a heavyweight contender, southpaw, stands around 6'1", very heavily set, kind of like a Mike Tyson type of build. Fights for the most part very aggressively, punches hard. The problem with him is he's 40 years old, or I believe older than 40. I think he might be 41 now, Amir Mansour. That's the problem. The guy is talented though. If you watch his training footage, if you see a lot of his fights, especially his earlier fights from a couple years ago, the guy's got hand speed, the guy's got power, the guy does have some decent skills. But at 41 years of age, he's slowing down. Even the fights from a few years ago, you could see his hand speed was quicker and whatnot than they are now, you know, especially in this fight with Kelvin Price. And the reason it's taken him so long to even reach fringe contender status, which he's at now, is because he spent a lot of time in prison, unfortunately, in his life. A great deal of time in prison. I believe like 10 years or something of his career was taken out because of time in jail. So I think that's going to cost him seriously. In this fight here against Kelvin Price, Kelvin Price is a former Deontay Wilder victim. Deontay Wilder took him out in, I believe it was 3 or 4 rounds. He took him out and knocked him out with a big right hand. People were not that impressed with his performance against Kelvin Price. In the first few rounds, Deontay really didn't throw any shots. But once he did start letting the right hand go, the fight was over very, very quickly. And Deontay really didn't take many shots from Kelvin Price. Yeah, and he wasn't winded or anything like that. He was, to me anyway, the Kelvin Price performance by Deontay Wilder was actually a pretty good performance. I was actually quite impressed with his patience and the way he set up his shots. Yes, he did give away the first few rounds, but I don't think he was worried about it. I don't think he was trying to necessarily win the first few rounds. I think he was getting the measure of his opponent, and he knew that as soon as he found his timing and his range for the right hand, the fight would be over, because he could sense in his opponent's movements and in his opponent's demeanor that Kelvin Price in that particular fight was very intimidated, and he was basically there to get knocked out because of the fact that he was so intimidated and so nervous in the fight. And personally, I thought that the Wilder Price the performance in the Price fight by Deontay Wilder was a pretty good performance. I was quite impressed. But anyway, moving on to this fight here with Amir Mansour against Kelvin Price, it was interesting to compare and contrast. Obviously, Amir Mansour don't have the height and reach that Deontay Wilder had. So he had to work hard to get in close on Kelvin Price. But it was noticeable that Kelvin Price was a lot more game in this fight than he was in the Deontay Wilder fight. He wasn't as intimidated in this fight as he was against Deontay Wilder. All right, he let his hands go more. He showed a lot more heart and a lot more courage for battle against Amir Mansour than he did against Deontay Wilder. And he certainly had more success. He was landing cleaner on Monsour than he was against Wilder. All right. Still didn't look too clever in there. You know, Kelvin Price, he looked clumsy and whatnot. But he did actually make it a little bit awkward for Amir Mansour. Mansour was missing with quite a lot of shots. He was finding it quite awkward to get in close. His head movement wasn't that great. One thing that Amir Mansour did in this fight was something which he said he would do if he ever fought the Klitschko's. And that is to hit Kelvin Price on the arms and on the elbows, right? Kelvin Price is a big, tall guy, like 6'7", 6'8". So he was sticking his left arm out. And Amir Mansour is a southpaw. He's a much shorter guy. And as Kelvin Price would stick his left arm out to try and measure Monsour, to measure the range, Monsour would crack him around the back of his arm or just behind the elbow with a right hook to try and discourage him from putting his arm out there. I remember Monsour in an interview a couple years ago, a year or so ago, I think it was, maybe a couple years ago, and he said that if he fought Klitschko and Klitschko tried to put his arm out like Klitschko normally does, especially Vladimir likes to put his left arm out before he throws his jab and measure his opponent. He said, if Klitschko tries to put his arm out there on me, I'll break his arm. I'll break that arm. You know what I mean? That's the kind of stuff Amir Mansour was saying. And he did try and do that with Kelvin Price. But on this performance, on this performance especially, I can't see Amir Mansour having much of a chance against Vladimir Klitschko. I can't see it. He found it too difficult to get in close. His physical strength is, decent, I guess, but he's not able to get his hands free and throw the kind of combinations that would really cause Vladimir problems up close. Because Vladimir is stronger than a guy like Kelvin Price when it comes to clinching and stuff like that. When he clinches you, there's very little you can do. He leans all over you. He's an extremely physically strong man, Vladimir Klitschko. And I don't think Amir Mansour has the intensity or the energy to be able to break free of those clinches and get shots off either once he's already in the clinch or just before Vladimir clinches him, managing to, move his body around and get an angle and maybe get some shots off. I just don't see Amir Mansour having the ability to do that. And again, in this fight here against Kelvin Price, he looked quite winded. Yeah, the exertion of trying to get at a man that tall did take its toll on Amir Mansour. Now, I can't remember how long this fight went. I think it was 5 rounds or something like that. 5 or 6 rounds the fight went. Amir Mansour was very tired by the end of it. All right, 40-year-old man, heavily muscled guy, and had to exert a lot of energy just to try and get in close and sling shots up at a big 6'7", 6'8" opponent. So he found it quite hard going from a cardiovascular point of view. And against Vladimir Klitschko, it's going to be even more difficult. So, Jesus, apologize for this cough, man. It's not leaving me alone at the moment. But yeah, just to sum up, man, Amir Mansour is a fun addition to the heavyweight division, especially in the United States, if he can get it on with some of those other heavyweight contenders. Amir Mansour, interestingly, called out Kimbo Slice a couple years ago. He was interested in a Kimbo Slice fight. He would destroy Kimbo Slice probably in 1 or 2 rounds. I mean, Kimbo Slice can't box, all right? This guy, Amir Mansour, would just decapitate Kimbo Slice. And that may be a fight that, Amir Mansour could go for. He's a 40-year-old man at the end of the day, so there ain't that many options for him. There's not that many people, money men in boxing, that are going to believe in him. So if he can raise his profile as high as he possibly can by taking on a guy like Slice, who definitely can't box but does have a profile amongst the casual fans, that could be a good move for him if he could get Slice in there. I don't see Kimbo Slice fighting him though. Kimbo, I'm sure, knows that Monsour would just destroy him. But anyway, if he managed to get that fight, that could be good for him. Also, Amir Mansour has been trying to fight Deontay Wilder. Monsour claims that he hits 3 or 4 times harder than Wilder. That's what he said in a post-fight interview for the Kelvin Price fight. Again, he stopped Price in about 6 or 7 rounds, 5 or 6. I can't remember how many rounds it was. You can go check BoxRec and go see for yourself. The fight is also available on YouTube somewhere, but it's not the fight on its own. It's the entire card, basically, available on YouTube. That's where I watched it. And he eventually stopped Kelvin Price in 6 or 7 rounds, knocked him out. Oh, actually, he knocked him down, and then Kelvin Price's corner pulled him out at the end of the round. So, Monsour claims that he hits hard, 3 or 4 times harder than Deontay Wilder. I beg to differ. I think Deontay Wilder hits a lot harder than Amir Mansour. Amir Mansour hits hard, don't get it twisted. The guy can punch, but I think Wilder's power is on the next level, But again, sorry about the cough. There are fights out there for Amir Mansour that could be interesting on the American scene. Guys like Deontay Wilder are there, Andy Ruiz, a lot of these young prospects coming up, and at 40 or 41 years of age, Amir Mansour is still undefeated. So put him in there with one of the other undefeated guys and see what happens. Hopefully it ends in a spectacular KO. So anyone who also saw this fight, Jesus Christ. Anyone who also saw this fight, please give me feedback on how you felt the fight went. Have you seen Amir Mansour fight before? What do you think he can do at 40 or 41 years old? Do you think there's any hope for him? Or do you think it's just way too late? Yeah, drop your comments below before I die of this cough right here. Yeah, drop your comments below. This is Hatman. I'm out.